Hi beautiful people, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anava. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. I make faith related and medical related content. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my experience in the COVID-19 ward as a medical practitioner. This is a two-part series where in part one I spoke about my experience with the COVID-19 vaccine that I got in April 2021, and in this video, which is the second video, like I said, it's going to be more based on what I did as a doctor in the COVID ward. If this is something that you are interested in watching, please go ahead and stay tuned. Without wasting much more time, let's get straight into the video. So I was in the COVID ward for about a week. We do rotations where we go cover the COVID ward and to spend a week there for the sake of exposure. Majority of the patients that we have in the ward are the critically ill patients. Now we know that when someone is infected with the COVID-19 virus, the symptoms can range. A person can actually be asymptomatic. Someone may have mild symptoms, someone may have moderate symptoms, and someone may have severe and critically ill symptoms. And majority of the patients that are admitted into the ward are the ones that are critically ill, that have severe symptoms, that are usually in severe respiratory distress. And these are the people that we tend to deal with in the ward. And so I was there for 1 week. The time when I rotated in the ward, that was at the beginning of the peak of the third wave. I'm sure if you have seen the news lately, you have seen how the cases are increasing within the country. But the time when I went to the ward, that was when things were just starting out. So all in all, I would say my experience in the COVID ward was very educational. Of course, this is a new disease, and so studying the way it operates in the body, the pathogenesis of the disease, it's very interesting. I can say that I learned a lot the 1 week that I was in the ward, even just how to treat the patient, the chest physio that we do, the proning. It was just very educational. For those of you that have not been in the ward or that are not aware of it, we usually prone the patients and we do some chest physio at the back just to help them breathe better. But yeah, I learned all that. I learned all that before the COVID ward, but then actually seeing it in act and being able to do it for my patient, that was very nice. It was a very good experience. One of the things that I learned in the week that I was in the ward is you have to really be present for your patient, but you have to learn how to keep yourself safe. The saddest part about being in the COVID ward is that it is an isolation ward, and therefore you are isolated not only from the people that you love, your family, your friends, your spouse, your children, but you're also isolated from the staff. We have to keep ourselves safe, and as much as we go in and we interact with the patients and we see the patients and we have this PPE for us to actually be there presently, we still have to be able to maintain a safe distance in order for us to protect ourselves. And that is something that I learned, trying to strike a balance into being present for your patient but still being able to keep yourself safe, because I will not lie, the isolation ward is very depressing for someone who may be there. Think about it, you are literally fighting for your life and you are alone. It is a very depressing place to be, and sometimes you just need the company of another human being. And so being able to be there for your patient, be that person for your patient, for them to have healthy human to human interaction, but still being able to keep yourself safe, is something that it's a balance that I had to learn how to strike. And I don't think I have perfected it, but hopefully that's something that I will perfect the next few times that I go back. Another thing also to top that off is that when you are doing aerosol generating procedures, like I said, the proning of the patient, when you are moving patients or you are doing chest physio that induces a cough, you have to be very, very, very careful. And we know that, of course, that is how the virus is spread. And so being able to help your patient, to help them breathe better and still being able to protect yourself, is something that is very, very vital to learn in COVID-19. Another thing that I learned is that patients and families are very frantic. You have to constantly update the people that are on the outside that do not have access to their family member that is on the inside. And many people, because of the stigma of this disease are very afraid for their family member. Because of the death rate of this disease, they're very afraid for the person that is on the other side. And so you are like the mediator, and speaking to the family, you have to know how to update them and comfort them and reassure them, but also give them the hard truth of how the progression of this disease is. There are some people who have seemed stable and have not made it, and there are some people who have been critically ill and have bounced back from that. And so you have to be able to educate the family on what this disease is, how their patient is doing, the prognosis of the patient, but still keep them calm and reassure them. So I'm going to give you 5 tips on this video if you ever have the opportunity to rotate in the COVID-19 ward. The first thing is that you should sanitize everything. Of course, I know that we're in an era starting from 2020 when everyone started to sanitize everything, surfaces, door handles, phones, like everyone sanitizes everything, but I cannot stress this enough. In the COVID sector, sanitize everything. I'm so thankful that with our ward we had pens, we had papers, everything that we needed was already in the ward, that they didn't have to be any back and forth coming in and out of the ward, because it is an isolation ward and everything that is already in the ward is exposed to the virus, and so you cannot bring it out. But even when you are in the ward, there are some certain things that you just have to practice actively instead of passively. For example, when you sanitize your hand, you would want to do it the normal way, but you have to follow the actual recommended way of sanitizing your hands so that you get every little bit of your hands before you enter and after you come out. Even when you wash your hands, you have to do it the proper way. Another thing that I had to actively remind myself of is that I need to keep myself sterile was fixing my glasses. I wear glasses. If you did not know, I wear glasses 24/7. I'm dependent on my glasses. And when I went into the COVID ward, I had the shield over my face, but there are times when my glasses would like slide down, and subconsciously I would notice myself like pushing them back, and those are the same hands that were touching the papers that I am writing on, the pen, the desk. Maybe I was doing a procedure with the patient. Although I take the first pair off, we usually double glove. Although I take the first pair off, I'm still exposed, and those are the same hands that were like pushing my glasses up. And so that's something that I had to like, I don't know, that's something that I had to like reprogram my brain to operate on. But also I'd have to sanitize my glasses every time I would come out of the ward, and I was going back in and out of the ward like multiple times a day. I would have to like re-put on my PPE, and when I'm taking off my PPE, one extra step that I'd have to add for myself when I am doffing is that I would have to sanitize my glasses. My second tip is that you have to learn how to don and how to doff. Donning is putting on the PPE before you enter the ward, and doffing is taking off the PPE when you are coming out of the ward. So there is a procedure, there is a way, a specialized way in which you do that. There is an order in which you have to put on that PPE. For example, you cannot be putting on your second pair of gloves before you have put on the suit. You cannot be putting on your shield before you have put on, like, there is a specific order that you have to do it. Even when you are removing, there's a specific way that you remove your shield. You cannot remove your shield in this way, but you have to remove it in this way. Even when you remove your mask, you have to remove it in this way. So learn how to don and learn how to doff respectively. The third tip I have is learn the COVID-19 treatment protocol. That is something that has been constantly changing and evolving from the time of onset of this disease. Some things have carried on to now, but not everything that we were using at the beginning is what we are using now. The guidelines are constantly evolving. So update yourself with the treatment guidelines, update yourself with what is currently being used at the facility where you are working or at the facility where you are practicing, and know the treatment protocol, know the treatment guidelines that you can apply on every patient that comes into the ward. The fourth tip that I have is not necessarily about the ward, but with any COVID-19 positive patient that you come in contact with, assess everything regardless of how stable the patient is, whether they are symptomatic, whether they have a mild cough, or whether they're in respiratory distress. Assess all the parameters that need to be assessed. And why I say this is because of the experiences that I had in that 1 week when I was in the ward, but even outside the ward. I remember the first patient that I ever came in contact with who tested positive for COVID-19. That was in 2020. I think that was around August. about August in 2020. That was my first patient ever for COVID-19. He came in and we swabbed him and it came out positive, and he came and said, I have the results and they are positive, and he was perfectly fine. He was sitting the way I'm sitting. He was not in respiratory distress. He wasn't even coughing. He was perfectly fine. And when I checked his saturation, he was saturating at 75% on room A, 75%. And it still boggles me to this day how someone was so stable, not in respiratory distress, and was saturated at 75. It really boggles me, and that is something that has been recorded time and time again, that it is possible for someone to have low saturations and still be clinically stable. And so that is what I'm trying to emphasize with this point. Like, if someone has tested positive for COVID-19, even if they're not coughing, even if they are not in respiratory distress, even if they don't have all the other symptoms, still measure their saturation, because they could be looking at you in the face and be desaturating at the same time. The second experience that I had was during the week of COVID-19. Someone came, he was tested positive for COVID-19, and I sent him to go do some D-dimers, which is a test to measure your coagulation cascade in the body. Basically, it measures whether you are clotting or not clotting. And I sent him for the D-dimer test, and he came back with D-dimers above 1,000, and that was someone who was clinically stable. He just had a mild cough. He wasn't in respiratory distress, but his D-dimers were in the thousands. And so that is another thing. So when you have someone who is positive for COVID-19, assess every part of them, send them for that chest x-ray, listen to their chest, send them for the lab test that they need to do, regardless of how they look clinically. With my patient, the one that I mentioned, the first patient that I ever encountered, because of the saturation that was at 75, we immediately admitted him and sent him to the ward. And as he was in the ward, he desaturated and he became severely and critically ill, to the point that days later, unfortunately, he demised. And it was so sad that someone who walked in talking and joking, he was with his friend and they were cracking jokes and they were talking and laughing at the whole situation, ended up losing his life just a few days later. It was really, really sad. And regardless of the medical interventions that were made, this is someone that we cannot save. And so yeah, my advice is just, regardless, guys, regardless of how stable a patient looks, the progression of this disease is too sudden. It is so sudden. Like, yes, the average is 2 weeks, but I have seen people progress within days, and it's really bad. The last tip that I have is just continuously study the pathogenesis of this disease. So much information is coming to light. People are constantly updating how this disease progresses, how it operates, what is working, what isn't working. Like I said, even the treatment protocols are constantly changing. So make sure you're constantly updated with not only the treatment protocols, but with how this disease works and how it operates in the body, the pathogenesis, the pathophysiology, everything that you need to know in regard to this disease. Just keep yourself constantly updated. So guys, that is the end of my video. That is my experience with the COVID-19 ward. I hope you did enjoy it. I hope you did learn something. If you have worked in the COVID isolation ward or anywhere under the COVID sector, please go ahead and comment down below what your experience has been. I look forward to hearing from you guys. If not, you can go ahead and message me on my Instagram. My username is anava.exo. Thank you so much for watching this video. Bye.